Hey, good morning everybody out there that wants to listen. Hope you're enjoying your Harley these days or whatever. What I want to talk about is your CVO V-twin Harley, Twin A and Twin B series CVO. That's what I'm talking about today. I want to clear up some hoaxing that is going on with a lot of repair shops that I'm seeing in videos. A lot of things I'm hearing, it's absolute lies, making a lot of money off of a lot of people that are uninformed or ignorant to the reality of the design of the CVO flywheels. I'm also going to mention tensioners in this video, which the Twin B has a total of 4 tensioners. The Twin A has 2 tensioners. A lot of people don't know that, but you need to become educated to that. The way to know if you have a Twin B engine, on the left side of the motorcycle, right under the oil filter, it'll go out, it'll curve upward, to a rounded end and come down. It looks like a owl's wing stretched out, cups up under the oil filter. As to where the Twin A CVO, it's not going to have that. The oil filter, there's not going to be, like a metal that wraps to the other side of the oil filter on the outside. That's the best way to tell, because see, you have counterbalancers in your Twin B series, and in your Twin A you don't, and in your Evo you don't. But let's stick to the CVO. Okay, Harley Davidson engines here. It can be even the Milwaukee 8. This would also apply to even the Milwaukee 8 engine of current production. Alright, the myth about that the flywheel shafts and crank pin, crank pin has your 3 sets of roller bearings and your connecting rods fit to your crank pin, and saying that these slip and that the shafts slip out of true. That stuff is absolute lies. People are being suckered and they're being taken for a lot of money. The pressed on flywheel shafts and crank pin, they can't slip due to, if you have a chain, made out of cast iron or steel, and you put an aluminum lock on it, and you put force under it, that aluminum lock is going to break first, people. Alright, now consider where, let's start with the crank pin. It's at the top of the flywheels, that holds your connecting rods. This talk about welding those in or whatever, that's absurdly ridiculous. Because the way that those are pressed in, you've got steel to steel that is pressed together. Even red hot heat could not make that slip. When you're talking about steel, or nodular cast iron, you've got to get past red hot to expand that metal. And steel will break before it will expand, people. Anybody that knows about machining knows that you're being lied to. If they know about metals and machining, they know that you're being lied to. Like, for example, why would you weld your crank pin with the roller bearings to your flywheels, as they show in a lot of videos? They're doing this so that they can tear down your engine and just make a couple of grand or $3,000 off of you for something that is absolutely stupid, ridiculous. Because before the crank pin ever gave way, the roller bearings at the connecting rods are going to give way. Can you understand that? I've worked around machining, and I've seen many charts And I know about and how to press fit items together. You know, I'm retired right now. Despite my youthful looks, I'm age 61. I retired by choice, but these are areas that I have experience and knowledge in. You know, press fitting parts or bolting parts, you know, whichever have be. And this pertains to oil field equipment, you know, which there's some high regulations on this stuff, you know, quality control, high regulations on this stuff for the fitting or the torque, the stress point, even x-raying metals to look for stress cracks. And I'm telling you that a crank pin, if you've got two steel flywheels and you've got that steel crank pin pressed into those two flywheels, it is not going to come loose, because for it to come loose, do you know that you would have to totally destroy the pistons in the motorcycle engine would have to be totally destroyed and crushed to pieces before the pin would ever slip. Get my point? So that's never going to happen. And if you take an item and you press fit it, you know, even like a wheel bearing into an axle tube for a rear differential vehicle, if you've got 3 sets of roller bearings and 2 connecting rods, those are going to give. And then if the stress is overbearing, whether it's backlash or it's directly from the compression from the cylinder itself, the piston would crumble to pieces long before that crank pin could ever turn in those flywheels. Because you see, those are the pistons are movable items. The wrist pins are movable items at the connecting rods. Okay, the connecting rods at the crank pin are movable items. Why would the crank pin move out of place? It's pressed in, people. And even over a period of time, that's not going to happen, because steel does not enlarge itself with use. It can wear down, but one fitting cannot become larger and one fitting become smaller. It can't happen, you know, unless you heat it white hot. And then the opposing part that went in, you would have to freeze it to reduce the size. I mean, now let's talk about the shaft ends. One goes through the primary side, you know, where your drive sprocket is for your chain that goes on your clutch hub. Okay, you know, that's that one's actually got the most stress of all. And then the one on the right side of your engine, your cam gear cover, okay, that rides on 2 roller bearings. It rides on 2 large needle roller bearings. One in the engine case and then one in your cam plate, you know, that holds your 2 cams that bolts up to the right engine case half. Alright, now, the roller bearings could become worn if you didn't have sufficient oil in your engine, or if your oil pump was defective, or if your oil filter was stopped up, you know, which would be great lack of care on the part of the owner rider. That would be their fault, you know, just like with anything. You know, if you never change oil, you're filtering, or you pay no attention when an engine gets noisy, of course there's going to be disaster, no matter what it is. But then that's not going to happen, because see, here again, those roller bearings, races, and those roller pins, the 2 I just told you that the right engine shaft rides on, those are not going to wear if they have lubrication. I mean, that would take enormous heat, and even scoring. You know, that can happen like in a piston cylinder, but those pistons are much softer. And even the material in those cylinders is much softer than what would be steel roller bearings. Now, let's talk about the shaft itself. The shaft is not going to slip at the flywheel. That's never going to happen. You know, the lie statement saying they slip out of trueness and it can alter your timing. That, people, does not happen. Because that shaft end, I mean, you've got a good length. The circumference, diameter of that shaft end is large. That is pressed into steel. That is tight. That is not going to slip. And on some of your Twin A and Twin Bs, I've even seen that these have 2 slot anchors in the flywheels themselves. How in the hell would that ever turn? It's not going to turn, people. You're being lied to. Also, that press fit is stronger than your Evo and your previous shovel head engines, to where the crank pin bolted on with hollowed nuts that went over. Same thing for your shaft ends. The press fit is tighter than that is. And I'll tell you why. Because you can, for example, tighten on Evo or shovel head flywheels, your shaft ends. You can use a standard torque wrench, or to tighten that by hand. All right, now go figure. No different than the head bolt on a car engine. Now, that press field, where that shaft is pressed in to those steel flywheels, that is much, much, much tighter than those nuts, those hollowed nuts that go on each side of the crank pin and on the inner part of the flywheels to tighten those shafts on. That press fit is much, much tighter. So here's what I'm telling you. It's a fact of matter. It's not debatable. It's not an argument. It's a fact of matter, people. The CVO press fit flywheel assembly is better than the previous bolt-on method, per crank pin and per shaft pins. It is better. I mean, you can ignore reality and listen to a person blowing smoke and talking crap, at a shop, at the internet, but that's for the sake of money. It's not going to change what is machining and metals facts of reality. And I know for a fact that those 2 shafts and that crank pin pressed into those steel flywheels, that is not going to come loose. And they say also that the shaft end on the cam gear side can wobble. No, it can't. Your bearings could become worn to where the whole flywheel assembly could go up and down slightly. But that would only be from lack of care or maintenance from the owner that could occur there. Same as the crankshaft in an automobile. You have a straight crankshaft, lengthwise. I mean, that crankshaft cannot wobble up and down on one end. Now, the whole crankshaft can go up and down if the bearings become worn. But that's lack of care by the rider or the owner. They're not using proper oils. Or, they're not lubricating, or they're not getting good lubrication is the only thing that could cause that. But the thing about it, your CVO flywheel assembly is better than any other Harley that was ever made. It's a fact. And no one can argue with me about this, because I know metals and I know machining. I know about these things, so you can't argue with me about it. Now, here are some problems, some things I don't like about the CVO. Alright, those tensioners for the cam, it's a very ignorant assembly. Like, for one thing, the chain for the cams Why is it necessary for the chains to be too loose? They say so that in case something has to give, there's slack and something will give. But excuse me, how come in your Harley Sportster or even your Evo, the gear teeth run together? If something gives, it simply turns the other direction, like if your engine backfires. The chain doesn't need to be longer than what it is. See, that could be corrected easily. Any machinist or engineer in the field, of engine assembly, in heats, temperatures, conditions, they can only know that's done that way to make money off people. Now this is where Harley Davidson messed up, and so those, I would say, if you buy a new Harley, every 25,000 miles, I would say, just to be safe, you'd want to take the cam cover off and check those damn tensioners. Because whether they call it nylon ends or whatever, it's still damn plastic, okay? And when heat fluctuation, heat and cold on plastic, it cracks over an extended period of time. So that is an issue. The other thing, if you have the twin B, here's something most people don't realize. On the left side of that engine, that flywheel shaft, right at where the shaft meets the flywheel itself, you've got a gear on it. Okay, and what it is, there's a plate under that, and on each side it bolts to two counterbalancers. Alright, you have a chain about this long, about that long. Okay, and it's going to be about this tall. It goes under, and it rides on a chain guide. That too is made out of nylon, so that's an issue. Okay, up above you have two tensioners that flip upwards to keep the slack out of the chain. Those are a problem. That's a concern. Now, from what I've seen a lot of these taken apart at 80,000 miles, and for some reason that area stood up pretty good. I don't know why, but it did. Maybe it gets more oil, being that it can splash in that area. That might be due to that reason. But anyway, I'm telling you, from a machinist's point of view, and an engineer's point of view, and I'm talking about metals, it is a fact. The press fit shafts, flywheels, and crank pin is stronger than the previous bolted metal, and it can't slip out of true, as they're claiming. They're lying to people. See, people that are having some problem, okay, either their spark plugs are bad or carburetor issue. That's all. Or bad wiring. That's all. I mean, the best thing to do when any Harley doesn't work right, a person needs to give them a gap tester gauge. If you're not putting out a blue spark, but let's say you're putting out a yellow spark or a red spark, your engine is not going to run right. It's not going to idle right. It's going to miss occasionally. Your spark plugs have to each put out a blue spark. Check that first and change your spark plugs. The next thing, focus on your carburetor and look at the color of your spark plugs. A proper running engine is going to have light gray electrodes. An engine that runs too rich is going to have black electrodes, which most Harleys do because people use the chokes on these when it's not even necessary. Unless a Harley is in a wind draft, chill, or unless it's under 45 degrees, do you know you don't need to use a choke on a Harley? You do not need to. I have a 2002 1450. Okay. And my bike, even in the winter here in Houston, Texas, it can get down to 35 degrees. You know, with just one throttle and then without choking it, I can hit the starter button and I rev it just a little, about 2 times. Not a lot, but just a little. I let go. It sits there and idles. Explain that. So why would I use the choke? And that's going to make most of them have black spark plugs. It's on the startup with that choke. And that can foul spark plugs. You know, once they turn black, the best thing to do is change them, because they'll never produce the proper spark once they become fuel valves. I mean, you can get by with them, but you know, it's not going to be as good. And spark plugs are cheap. When you're talking about your Harley, you don't mind spending, you know, $6 for 2 spark plugs. But when you buy spark plugs, buy 10 of them at a time. Have spares. And carry a spark plug wrench and ratchet with you on your motorcycle. If they don't run right, change the spark plugs on them. You know that, and you gotta pay attention, you know, to your carburetor. You know, float bowls and needle valves can get sticky. Another problem, like your accelerator pump. You know, like on my carburetor, it's on the right side of the carburetor. It's got the rubber boot, you know, and then it's got the diaphragm and it's got the pump. If that gets bad, you can sit there and rev all day. It's not going to throw fuel into that intake manifold. You know, but, you know, the main thing I wanted to cover is the myths and the damn lies about these CVO flywheels. It's lies. Those are not going to slip out of true or out of timing. Because, see, you've got a gear on the end that bolts on the end of that right shaft, and then a chain to the gear on the back cylinder camshaft. How is it going to come out of true? That shaft of the flywheel is not going to shift, man. It's not going to shift. I mean, for that to occur, you would bust both your pistons and break your connecting rods before that could occur. And the crank pin, that's not going to slip, because the roller bearings at the connecting rod, that's going to move. Why would the crank pin slip? Whenever a 4-ton press was used to press it in 2 steel flywheels. You know, and you're talking about a pretty hefty diameter on those things too. And the fact they're hollowed in the middle, it's still thick. And the hollowed part, you know, oil can get in there. I've also seen these idiots on these sides, those have 2 oil holes in those crank pins. You know, where that those roller bearings are. They put cap ends on those. That's stupid. Of course that's going to cause premature oil failure. See, these people are just trying to make money. You know what people need to learn, there's a difference between a salesman, a marketer, and there's even a difference in a machinist and a mechanic. Because you know, most mechanics are not machinists. They are also not knowledgeable of metals and heating metals and stress points, press fits. They're not aware of those things. That's why the mechanic uses the machine shop. Another lie about CVO flywheel assembly, they say they are not rebuildable. I call bullshit on that. Of course they're rebuildable. Because if you can buy that crank pin and those shaft ends, you simply press the others out and press the new ones in. How is it not rebuildable? You know, it's like if you change a bearing in the differential of the rear end on a car. You're pressing out the old bearing, you're pressing in the new bearing. It's just easy as that. See, here again, lies. Because they want you to buy, you know, like LSS wants you to buy the whole flywheel assembly with the connecting rods incorporated. Bullshit! You know, it's just the market. They're controlling the market right now. But that is a very, very rebuildable assembly, because if someone gives me a CVO flywheel assembly, and then another person, they give me 2 new shaft ends, and they give me another crank pin with the connecting rods and the rollers. I can go to any machine shop and I can have the old parts pressed off and these new ones pressed in. Bingo. So of course it's rebuildable. Very rebuildable. But anyway, this is Earl signing off for right now. Listen to truth. Quit listening to marketers. Quit listening to liars. Liars, can be so keen in believing, and they have the ability to look so professional. But if something's not true, it's not true. Anyway, take care of people, and take care of your ride. If you treat it right, it might treat you right. Later.